So good to be here. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, friends and family. My name is Grace Dove. I'm from Seskin, Canim Lake, in the unceded territory of Secwepemcúlecw, near 100 Mile House, BC. Thank you. First, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations on which Vancouver stands. May today's platform support their sovereignty. I'm truly honored to be here. My main message today is how together we can do better to raise consciousness in Hollywood towards a more truthful portrayal of Indigenous peoples. I believe acting as a form of truth-telling is a powerful tool in educating people on the issues that we face today. It is so important for the original people and our allies to change Hollywood's portrayal of us. In over 4,000 films, Hollywood has projected the image of Indigenous peoples. First, as heroes in the silent film era of the 1920s, then as savage enemies in classic westerns of the 40s and 50s, like They Died with Their Boots On and Stagecoach. Directors like John Ford and actors like John Wayne created and profited from these negative stereotypes. Successful movies in the 70s like Little Big Man and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest helped to change the negative image of Native people. Not until films like Smoke Signals, Hey Victor, Powwow Highway, and Thunderheart in the 1990s did Native people in films have fully developed, authentic characters. Growing up in northern BC and going through a primarily white public school system, I hid my Native identity for fear of being hurt for who I was. Even as a child, I knew that it wasn't safe to be an Indian. And now, over 20 years later, I'm understanding just how deep these traumas go. It was safer for me to blend into white culture than to express my Native identity. Working as a teenager within the city, I faced daily interactions with white privilege and racism, commenting on my ethnicity, "You're too pretty to be Native." Knowing that my waitress tip and my safety depended on my politeness, I rarely expressed more than a fake, painful smile. We learn ways to see Natives as undeserving of mutual respect because we've been taught that Native people are less than human in schools, by our families and friends, and by what we see in the movies. After moving away to Vancouver and doing 16 months of self-discovery work at acting school, I was able to face these traumas for the very first time and see them for the discriminatory acts that they were. I began to understand how negative stereotypes in the media are affecting Indigenous peoples daily by legitimizing violence and racism towards us, and just how normalized it had become. To my survival, I met other culturally grounded Indigenous artists in the Vancouver area, and this community encouraged my self-growth and reclamation of identity through our traditional ways of being. When I was a little girl and I visited Hollywood for the very first time, I went to the Chinese theater and I put my hands in the prints of actresses before me. My dad said, "Get comfortable, you'll be here one day." Right then, a dream emerged. A decade later, in 2015, I walked the red carpet with Leonardo, DiCaprio, and Tom Hardy at the premiere of The Revenant. This, of course, was in front of the Chinese theater. Thank you. Dreams do come true. When we filmed The Revenant in Ushuaia, Argentina, the very tip of South America, the end of the world, I was encouraged by my dad to keep a journal. Here's an entry from August 21st, 2015. Amazing! I can't get over the past few days. Everything hurts in such a good way. Leo, our movie son, and I shot a bunch of different scenes. Looking into Leo's eyes, he was so relaxed and handsome, I could barely keep eye contact without blushing. Then into the afternoon, we hung from a harness 4 feet off the ground. It was intensely physical work. My whole body is aching. We filmed a scene where I get shot. I was so challenged with the blocking. I had to fall naturally, yet landing exactly on my spot with my face towards the camera. I had a squib hooked up, so I was waiting for someone on the other end of the controller to press it, to shock me, to fall, to bite a blood capsule, and then to try and die. Yeah. Each take, they relight the pyro, and I know that there's only so much fuel. The sun was going down, and the golden hour was slipping away. We were losing the light. After 3 takes, I felt like I was failing to meet the director's expectations. It was a crazy amount to do with no practice and hundreds of cast and crew all watching. Once again, the flames were burning my village. Director Alejandro Inarritu shouts, "I need you to do better." Yikes. I imagined those flames as my dreams and my future if I didn't pull this stunt off. Dramatic, I know, it's so unlike me. I was trembling with fear, with sadness, with regret for my character, but also for me. Take 4. Action. I hit my mark right before the sun set on that final evening of this year-long journey. Somehow, by Alejandro directing me to do better, I was able to do better. Now let's fast forward 2 really tough years. Rejection after rejection, more auditions than I'd like to admit. I wasn't booking any roles. After The Revenant, I made the decision to cut my hair to avoid the stereotypes that are holding my people back in the industry. Looking back, I realized that this decision to cut my hair had the opposite effect that I sought. Without my long, dark braids, I no longer fit Hollywood's image of the Native woman. Once again, my identity was in jeopardy. Conform to the stereotypical image of Native people, or take control of my own identity and representation. With only $14 left in the bank, I booked a starring role on the Netflix thriller How It Ends, alongside Academy Award-winning actor Forrest Whitaker and Theo James. Thank you. I was able to bring authenticity to my role and bring Ricky to life by doing things such as getting her tattoos designed by my Oglala Lakota friend Wiko from the Pine Ridge Reservation, rather than going with something off the internet. I added authentic Indigenous phrases such as hola, among other things. I fought against self-harm scars that would have forced her to play the victim. I wanted to bring agency and emotional expression to a character that could have been another stoic, quiet victim. I'm grateful to my director, David Rosenthal, and the writer, Brooks McLaren, for allowing such change. Now, hundreds of messages are flowing in from across Turtle Island, thanking me for portraying our people in a good way. This is how it begins. In closing, I invite you to be an ally, to educate yourself and learn the true history of what happened in Canada. and why the theft of our lands, our language, and our culture is still affecting us today. My elders say that our consequences last for 7 generations. Let me ask you this. What was the last movie you saw with Indigenous content? Did you see Wind River, Indian Horse, or Rabbit Proof Fence? How did you feel watching a film with Indigenous people as the main characters? Did it challenge you? Did it make you feel uncomfortable? We need to move past Hollywood's portrayal of the Indian as a thing of the past and see Native people for who we are today. Hollywood has the ability to do just that. Watch the movie Real Injun, which illustrates the different issues that we are facing in the movies today. Support First Nations actors, filmmakers, artists. When we are in control of our own representation, when we tell our own stories, and when we, Indigenous people, portray ourselves and not people playing red face or actors claiming that their great-great-grandma was a Cherokee princess, we are not only challenging stereotypes, but we are empowering ourselves in a form of truth-telling that is liberating me from the harms of colonialism. Finally, I'd like to leave you with a speech from Chief Dan George of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, spoken at Canada's Centennial in 1967. I admire Chief Dan George because he is a role model for Indigenous peoples in film and broke a lot of the stereotypes that had come before him. He says, "O Great Spirit, in the long 100 years since the white man came, I've seen my freedom disappear like the salmon going mysteriously out to sea. When I fought to protect my land and my home, I was called a savage. When I neither understood nor welcomed his way of life, I was called lazy. When I tried to rule my people, I was stripped of my authority. My nation was ignored in your history textbooks. They were little more important in the history of Canada than the buffalo that ranged the plains. I was ridiculed in your plays and your motion pictures. Give me back the courage of the olden chiefs. Let me wrestle with my surroundings. Let me once again live in harmony with my environment. Like the Thunderbird of old, I shall rise again out of the sea. I shall grab the instruments of education and technology. With these new tools, I shall build my race into the proudest segment of society. I shall see our young people and our chiefs sitting in the houses of law and medicine and government. So shall we shatter the barriers of our isolation. So shall the next 100 years be the greatest in the proud history of our tribes and our nations." After 100 years of cinema defining Native people's image to the world, our current generation of Indigenous filmmakers are ready to apply the tools of education and technology to create authentic, beautiful, and healing films. As Chief Dan George envisioned, like the Thunderbird of old, we are rising up with the knowledge and traditions of our great people. And with your support, I'm ready to learn and to lead. We have work to do in a good way. I challenge you, those within the range of my voice, Canada, Hollywood, the world. Like Alejandro, my director, said, do better. I believe Great Spirit, Creator, the director of my understanding, yearns for us children of Mother Earth, to do better towards each other in our journey, yearns for us to do better. All my relations,